leader par excellence, an all-round exemplary human, a paragon of possibilities, and a thriving man. Let's make welcome the Group Chief Executive Officer, Landmark Africa Group, Mr. Paul Onwuanibe, for the keynote address today at day one of the 22nd WIMBIZ Annual Conference. You can't be sitting down to welcome our keynote speaker. Give him a standing ovation. It is such an honor to have him here today.
Thank you very much. Now I know a lot more about myself than I did before I walked into the hall. So I've got a few secrets to tell. I've been in the hotel 3 times this week to speak, and I've never spoken at Landmark. I really wish WIMBIZ would bring me to Landmark next year to speak. Well, I had to plug that in. But anyway, on a more serious note, last year you had the gorgeous and amiable and ecstatic Chimamanda Adichie. This year you have me. I wonder why. This is the first time I'm speaking to a woman, a female audience. So can I say, distinguished ladies and very few gentlemen, thank you for being here and thank you for listening to me. A few days ago, I had decided to do a presentation, and I had a big PowerPoint presentation, very colorful. And then on my way here, on my way to work in the morning, I decided I'm not going to do the presentation. I'm going to speak from the heart. So I'm going to tell you 8 principles, 5 tools, 2 big confessions, and a little bit more about myself that you probably don't know. So I'm going to paint some pictures in your mind with some stories. And the first story I'll tell is one when I was born. And I was growing up, and I grew up in an environment, and this was almost 60 years ago, by the way. I grew up in an environment where everything was man-made cars, man-made lakes, man-made mountains. And I asked my mom, what do women make? And she said, she looked at me sternly, and after some time she said, Paul, women make men, and I made you. So I did some research on my way here, and I'm not ashamed to read that research, but I found it fascinating. I actually tried to answer that question, what do women make? And I found out women make as much as men, or probably more than men, right? But the narrative is controlled a lot by men. Now, I'll read out a few things, and shout if you knew a woman made it, right? In terms of invention. The GPS was created by women. Wi-Fi, the coffee filter, the windshield wiper, Bluetooth, home security, the bulletproof vest, the cure for leprosy, DNA, disposable diapers, and then sex chromosome. I mean, many, many, many more. I've named but a few. And I tell you what's amazing, by the way, is one lady, she was an actress during the war, right? As they say, necessity is the mother of invention. During the war, her name is Hedy Lamarr. She created 3 of those things. There was something she created during the war to help guide laser missiles. That's the same technology that's been used today to create Bluetooth, Wi-Fi, and GPS. Amazing, isn't it? Yeah. You know, I always remember this phrase, and it says, until the lions learn how to speak, the tale of the hunt will always be told by the hunters, right? So, you know, ladies, lions must speak. Lions will speak. Platforms like this will make lions speak. You will speak, and you will take what is yours. The truth here is, platforms like this are amazing. They do so much to change the narrative. They do so much to boost the spirit and do so much to bring real equality back into the system. So many things are done by women that are not necessarily appreciated. I know I've read a few, and I hope everybody does their research to read a little bit more. So just before I move on to my sort of 8 principles, I'm sure some of you know Malcolm Gladwell, and you've read his book. And Malcolm Gladwell basically says that where you're going can never be detached from who you are. I don't agree. I read the book. I love the book. There are many business lessons, many life lessons. But we are responsible for exactly who we are, and we're responsible for who we're going to become. So you know what? We are exactly who we need to be to make the change we want to see. So the MC has given me, I said a few things about me. And I noticed on the board, they've given me a company that I don't belong to, but if whoever owns that company, is it mine now? Well, I'll tell you a little bit about myself. So a few of my friends, who I'm sure are here in the audience somewhere, sent me some WhatsApp messages when they heard I was a keynote speaker. And one of them was a little video I did. I think it was part of the Lions Den video. And I'm busted. Yes, I wanted to be a dustbin driver, and I will be a dustbin driver. In many ways, I still am a dustbin driver. But I'll tell you a little bit. So I grew up in London, in England. My parents were effectively civil servants. My father worked with the diplomatic corps, and my mother was a journalist with the BBC. At the age of 10, because I wanted to be a dustbin driver, my father said, no, none of that. He sent me to boarding school in Nigeria. So I came with my brother to Federal Government College, Lagos, Ijanike, and it was a culture shock. Oh, Ijaniki's in the room? All right. It was a big culture shock. But you know what? After a year, 2, 3 years, I really enjoyed it. And you know, a lot of my friends that I've made today, a lot of the big influences I've had in my life came from the people and the lessons I learned at Federal Government College, Ijanike. In fact, I liked it so much, I wanted to stay on after the 5 years. But my parents had put me on a list of a school in England, in a little village just north of Windsor, and said, I've been on that list for 3.5 years, so I must do my A-levels there. So I went off to Eton. It was such a change from Ijanike, an incredible change. And I realized how much I actually hated England. You know, what I liked about Ijanike, I saw people that looked like me, that behaved like me, and that felt like me. Back there, I was different, and everything I did stood out. And you know, when people say, you know what, oh, someone is talking about you, I think, you know what, if you hate people talking about you, you hate irrelevance even less. And what I witnessed when I was growing up was complete irrelevance. You were literally a number. Anyway, we move on. I found a way to take my JAM. I had 3 subjects I knew very well, maths, physics, and economics. I chose them for my JAM. I looked for a course that matched it, and I looked for universities. So the courses that matched it were basically architecture courses. There was University of Lagos, University of Jos, and University of Nigeria. I chose University of Nigeria not because I knew where it was, but because I had the name Nigeria in it. Came over to Nigeria and did my university program. Absolutely mind-boggling, absolutely amazing. I felt I missed out on Jos, so I did my youth call in Jos, and I had a great time there. Anyway, people from Jos in the room? So I then went, sorry, the time says time up, but it'd be nice to understand the timing. Anyway, so I came back to England, did my MBA, and went through various jobs. But at some point, I joined a startup company, and that company was called Regis at the time. The founder of the company was a guy called Mark Dixon. His parents had just died in a motor accident, and he had a brother and a sister. He was the eldest of the 3 of them. And they inherited a 200,000 euro bakery. He sold the bakery, collected 200,000 euros, and wanted to create this company that he felt to be the best and the biggest company in the world. He wanted it to be represented across the world. I tell you this story, and because when I'm talking about my principles later, you'll understand how they sort of link, and you'll empathize and understand the genesis of it. So he wanted 7 people to work for him, and he wanted 7 people from different continents. So you know, he hired a Mexican called Bob Grudo, an Indian called Rudy Lobo, a British guy called Oliver Jones, but he was looking for an African. And someone introduced him to me, and I went to see him, and he says, I want you to work for me. Are you really African? I said, yes. He said, but you don't speak like Africans. I said, I do speak like Africans. He said, okay, speak African. I said, I'm the only African in this room then. So anyway, I did. I jumped. I jumped from a £200,000 a year job to a job that was barely £25,000, £30,000 guaranteed. But he told me he would give me £1 million a year if we did well. But obviously things like that never really happen in real life. So a few years later, 2, 3 years, I mean, he basically couldn't afford to pay the salaries. So 7 of us, and the company had grown, we were about 30, 40 by then, but 7 of us were leading different parts. I was leading the property and logistics team. And he said, look, I can't pay your salary, I'm going to give you 5% shares each. 4 of the 7 of us took the 5% shares. I had bread and butter issues. I said, I'm sorry, I couldn't do that, but pay me when you can. So I stayed working with the company. Anyway, fast forward 8 years. It launched simultaneously on the New York Stock Exchange and the London Stock Exchange for $1.4 billion. In that time, I had traveled to 269 countries. I'd been to every single continent. I traveled to 169 countries. I'd opened 267 offices around the world. Night flights, economy flights. I basically slept 3-4 hours a day, if that. And what did I get? I got a good handshake, a pat on the back, and he gave me my company car. My other colleagues cashed checks of $70 million. It was my first shock in life, and one of the principles I'm going to talk about later, you remember this story from that principle. Anyway, fast forward. To be fair, he was a good guy. I then decided to start my own business, and that business today is called Landmark. He gave me £500,000 as a loan. So I started the business, opened offices in a few countries in Europe, and then went to America in 2001. Opened an office in America in the New York Trade Center. I was on the 78th floor. I used to look out of the window. I was so proud of myself. Invited my parents, invited my friends. We had an opening there. We're so proud. 3 months later, a plane went into it. I lost 7 of my staff. I remember that day, I had arrived in New York that morning. I was downstairs, walking across the road from the Millennium Hilton into the World Trade Center Tower 2 when the first plane hit. And it was a disaster by no proportions, and I'm sure many of you remember it today. Of the 7 staff, 3 of them were women, 2 of them were single mothers. The children they had were under the age of 4. I had to sell everything, set up a foundation to take care of these children. But I learned a big lesson. Thank you. I learned a big lesson, and it's called the American lesson. All the American organizations that were impacted had grants and help and stuff. But I was a British company in America, and we received absolutely nothing. Even the insurance companies didn't pay. Anyway, it is what it is. So moved back to the UK, and I thought to myself, you know what? I'm done with this Western world. It's time for Africa. This time is Africa. So So one morning, called a friend of mine, woke up and said, look, I want to start this business in Africa. And he said, all right, come to Nigeria. So I came to Nigeria, did a few tours around, and I said, look, I would like to do this thing in Africa, not just Nigeria. So we opened offices almost simultaneously in Johannesburg for the south, in Nairobi for the east, in Lagos for the west, and then we dotted around looking for offices in the north, and it never quite worked out. But we had at least 3 of the 4 corners of Africa. And over the next 10 years, we ran a serviced office business. Guess what? My old boss came and bought it back. Yeah, in 2015, he gave us a truckload of money and bought it back. We used all this money, and we bought this place you see today called Landmark. I remember... So I recall, I wanted to set up a business that sort of represented what people could do in a country like this, in a place like this. I thought, what are the challenges? Let's find a way to mitigate these challenges, right? So security, infrastructure, people and stuff. So I said, let's put everything in one place. So I got into the air, I rented a helicopter, looked around Lagos, and at the time, the bustling business district of Victoria Island was developing quite rapidly, and that growing Lekki corridor too was growing. And I saw this place, and I thought, what's this? It's in front of the water, it's between the 2 places, and it's just green marshland. And I was later to find out, they called it Morocco then, I was later to find out it's what today is known as Oniru. So we bought this, and I don't think it's a secret. Well, it probably is a secret, but I know I have a few staff in the room, so I'm going to let the secret out. We paid $17.5 million for this piece of land 13 years ago. Some people thought we got it free, we didn't. But anyway, move on. Some incredibly hardworking women and men over the last 10 years have worked. And today, we've turned that place into the fastest growing business, leisure, and lifestyle destination on the West African coast. So why do I tell you this story? We've had our bumps, and we've had our successes, we've had our failures. We're not out of the woods yet. We're still trying to work towards progress. So as they say, success is maybe not a destination, it's a journey. You just decide when you get off it. So, so dream. As I said, over the next 20 minutes, I believe, 15 minutes, 46 seconds, I'm going to share these 8 principles. And the first principle is, you must dare to dream. You must dare to dream. You know, not all dreams come true, but they won't come true if you don't dream and if you don't try to execute it. Right? So I say, you know, upgrade your dream to reality and try and upgrade your conviction to destiny. Some of you may have heard the Walt Disney story. Have you heard the Walt Disney story? All right. Young boy, badly treated at home. His sister was sick. He used to draw pictures and found out it made her happy. And then he decided, you know what, I'm going to try to make all the children in the world happy. And day after day, he had all sorts of jobs. He drew pictures, and today they've created Mickey Mouse, Snow White, Seven Dwarfs. And Disney's now a $200 billion empire. So you can imagine what he went through. He dreamt it, he achieved it. And the thing about dreams is, you know, not every dream, yes, comes true. But to make it come true, you've got to try to do something about it. So, when you believe in something, you've got to undeniably pursue it in a way that nobody else can, right? And that's basically what he did. But to do that, as I said, dreams don't always come true. You've got to be resilient. So the principle 2 is resilience. You must be resilient. Now, they say, and I have this on the back of my wall, if you want something you've never had, you've got to be prepared to do something you've never done, right? And that's all about resilience. I'm sure you know the Michael Jordan story. Well, Michael Jordan in high school wanted to play basketball. He loved basketball. He tried for his high school team. They didn't take him. They said he couldn't play. So he practiced every day. Now, I'm sure we all know who Michael Jordan is. Well, Michael Jordan says, I have missed 9,000 shots. I have lost 300 games. I have been given the opportunity 26 times to score the match-winning basket and failed. I have failed, and failed again, but that's why I'm a success today. So, what's the moral of that story? The moral of that story is, you will take your chances, you will fail, right? But that's experience. Don't be discouraged if you fail. There's a narrative we must change today. I just love the theme of the conference, you know, I am possible. So we're going to make the impossible possible, but the narrative has to be ours and we've got to control it. You know what they say, the harder the task, the lesser the competition. So it's important, when things are hard, that's when to get going. That's when to start, because it means there are very few people who are prepared to dig in and do those things. Lesson 3, principle 3, staying power. So you know what they say about staying power. The road to success is always under construction. 90% of people who start things never complete it. Sometimes it's the energy, sometimes it's the passion, sometimes it's just the will. Sometimes they never really believed in it, right? But staying power. And I'll tell you the story, do you know the Domino Pizza story? 2 brothers, Tom and James Monaghan, 2 Irish boys living in America. And Tom was a delinquent at home. He basically went to an institution. The mother took care of James alone. Anyway, Tom and James met many years later. At the time, James had started this little restaurant and wanted to bring Tom in to sort of resuscitate him. So Tom came back. They started this restaurant, opened a couple of restaurants, and then started doing pizzas. What is today known as Domino Pizzas. Anyway, a few years down, I think it was 6-7 years down the road, James, who brought the theory to Tom, said, look, we've made so much money, let's quit. Let's take our money and quit. Let's take our chips off the table. Tom said, no, it's not time to quit yet. So James said, buy me out. So Tom did. At the time, it was $750. He bought him out. James went and bought a Volkswagen with it and celebrated with his friends and looked good. Tom went on and sweated and sweated and sweated. Today, Domino Pizzas in 17,000 countries. 90 countries, 17,000 stores, and it's a $13 billion empire. And you know what? They owned 22% of Volkswagen. The moral of this story is setback. There will be setbacks, yes? The important thing after a setback is survive. Yeah? After you survive, the most important thing is to thrive. After you thrive, then excel, right? But don't try and excel from the setback. So we'll tell a short story of my fourth principle is one called adaptability. In life, you have to be adaptable. You know, they say you can never control the cards that you're dealt. You can only control the hand you play. So to be adaptable, you've got to learn from the past, recognize you're in the present, and then plan for the future. But you've got to swing. You know, everybody's heard the term, you've got to swing or roll with the punches. So I'm going to tell you a story. I'm sure not many of you, so I'm just looking around the room, not many of you, but I existed 30, 40 years ago. And there was, can you remember the video industry? There was a company called Blockbusters. Oh, wow. Some of you remember that. Yeah. So they were the fastest growing, the biggest sort of video rental company in the world at the time, and they were in all the countries. And they had a CEO, his name was Jim Keyes. In 2008, the Netflix story had just about started. And Jim Keyes, remember mocking Netflix at his AGM when they asked him, are you worried about this video streaming industry? And he said, nah, that they're not even on his radar. He doesn't even look at what they do. That what they're doing is they're opening more stores and producing more of these VHS Betamax tapes. That was 2008. In 2010, they filed for bankruptcy. Yeah? What did Tom do? What did Jim Keyes do wrong? He didn't adapt. The time was changing. In my lifetime, we've moved from a rotary phone to a car phone to a briefcase phone to a handheld phone to literally more computing power in your hand than people had in universities in those days. As a matter of fact, I'm not ashamed to say, when I was in University of Nigeria, my colleagues in the computer science department had never seen a computer, right? That's where we are today. That's how fast change is. So be aware, change is there and change is always coming. Number 5, principle 5, an Olympic mindset. Good old-fashioned principles, hard work, integrity, and excellence. Keep an Olympic mindset. So I'll tell you this story, I'm sure some of you know. In 1936, there was a guy called Jesse Owens, and he was the most successful Olympian of the time. He won 4 gold medals in one Olympics. And the 200-meter race, he broke the world record. The person who came second, his name is Matthew Robinson. He broke the world record as well. Jesse Owens won that race by 200th of a second. Jesse Owens went on to become a world star. Matthew Robinson became a janitor. The thin line between success and failure, it's a slimmer, it's a wither. There's no chance for second place. We have to preach for first. So always do things in a way you can that nobody else can. Do things in a way that people can't stop talking about you. So the Olympic mindset is extremely important. Number 6, be passionate. You know, the best things in life is the opportunity to do things that work hard at something that you're actually passionate about. And passion actually does count. I don't know whether you all know the El Coto story, the hotel in San Diego. They were trying to break through, they're trying to build an elevator. The hotel was incredibly successful. They're trying to build a new elevator in this hotel. And they had to close the hotel down for about 6 months to build this elevator. So when they were talking about it, the janitor was walking by and he heard this. He'd worked in that hotel for 18 years. He was afraid of losing his job. So he thought to himself, he has an idea. Rather than put the elevator on the inside, put it on the outside. So he told his bosses, they laughed at him, but they thought about it, and they did it. Today, right, he's basically the chief executive of that hotel, the El Cortez Hotel. It's literally a museum in San Diego now at the moment. But you know, today there probably 20 to 30% of the elevators in the world in retrofitted buildings have been put on the outside. That's what we call the sky elevators. One man, down to passion, thought about it. I remember my mom said when I was young, she said, you know, you have an excuse. It's okay if people are smarter than you. It's okay if people are more talented than you, but you have no excuse for people to work harder than you. You have no excuse for someone to bring more passion to the table than you. My 7th principle is honesty, you know, and be principled. It's very hard. It's a rare gift. It's a rare sentiment or principle in this part of the world. You know, there's so little competition and there's so much opportunity to be honest, to keep your integrity. You know what integrity does and what principles do? They help you make difficult decisions. They enter a room long before you get into it, and they stay in that room long after you've left. It's very hard to do it, but you know, when you have a difficult decision, right, your principles make it for you. You don't have to think about it. Honesty is important. Integrity is important. In the hardest of times, try to keep it. So as they say, just be a good person. That's what principles are. Be a good person. Do unto people what you expect people to do unto you. My last principle is one called excellence, and you've all heard this, right? You know, again, excellence is another scarce commodity in Nigeria. You know, but you know, it's so important to give your very best to anything you do. You never really get the second chance to make a first impression. So the level of importance it takes to actually give your very best. And not everybody does it. Sometimes it takes the same amount of time to do a bad job as a good job. So whatever you do in life, do try to focus on doing absolutely your very best. They say, if you can't write something worth reading, then do something worth writing about. So those are my principles, and then I'll tell you the tools. So these tools, the first tool is have ambitious friends. You know, my mom used to say to me, birds of the same feather flock together, right? Show me your friends. Have ambitious friends. I'm sure you heard the Google story. Larry Page and Sergey Brin. I'm sure you know the Tim Cook and Steve Jobs Apple story. I'm sure you know the Paul Allen and Bill Gates Microsoft story. And it goes on and on and on. You know, friendship is a currency. Have ambitious friends. Don't let bad people bring you down. Second is network relentlessly. I mean, we come to places like this, and I suppose the fact you're all here, I barely need to talk about this. But networking is a key concept. You know what they say? Your network is? Yes, it's your net worth, absolutely. So, you know the foundation, we don't know the Facebook story. 2.9 billion users. How did it start? A fairly popular guy on campus wanted to keep in touch with his community, right? And people liked it, and people joined him. And I know there are all sorts of stories of whose idea it was and stuff like that. But the point is, right, it was all based on social networking. And some of the most successful companies in the world today are platforms for social networking. Third, increase your surface area of luck. This destroys the notion that luck is by chance. And what it basically means is, you know, you need to create an environment where luck can manifest itself. What does that mean? That means the harder you try, the luckier you become, right? Increase your surface area of luck. And there's a story, I don't know how many of you know the Samsung story. So this guy started as a vegetable seller. He started as a vegetable seller, sold vegetables, then decided he needed to move on. He wasn't selling enough vegetables, so started selling clothing. And after clothing, he started selling a few second-hand goods. Then he moved into electronics and started selling black and white TVs. Can you remember those old Samsung TVs that were big and yeah? So they started doing that. And they were growing as a company. Then they went then phones. Today I understand they're into construction and shipbuilding and stuff. What did he do? He increased his surface area of luck. I'm not saying be a jack of all trades, but what you need to do is you need to look at what you do and ensure that you put yourself in a place where luck can come to you. And my last tool is understand your market. Understand your market. It's so important to understand where you are, who you are, what you need to be, what everybody else is doing, before you decide how you're going to be better than them. So understand your market. And, sorry, this is my fourth, not my last. You may know the story of Toyota. So Toyota, the guy who created Toyota started by breaking down American cars, Ford, Chevrolet, Chrysler, and then he decided to make his cars, it was a Japanese company, he decided to make his cars in Japan. Then there was a war in Japan, and the cars couldn't move very fast. So he decided, you know what, let him go to America and try and create this thing. So he took the concept of Toyota to America, then realized that it wasn't selling because the cars were too slow, and the roads there were good. So he decided to increase the speed of the cars. Now, because he had learned from the very best of American companies and increased the speed of the cars and understood the market was different, today, Toyota is the fastest selling car in the world today. And that's the story of understanding the market and moving from one market to another. My fifth and last tool is know your numbers. If it doesn't count, if you can't count it, it doesn't count. If you can't count it, it doesn't count. I remember reading a comment from Bill Gates, and Bill Gates said, I wrote a proposal. I sent it to 1,200 people. 900 people declined it. 300 people said yes. 85 of the 300 people reacted. 30 of the 85 actually did something, but only 11 made me successful. Know your numbers. If you can't count it, it doesn't count. So those are my 5 tools. Now my confessions. So the first confession is the confession I call the economics of trade-off. It's called the balance fallacy. So in life, many people preach to you, my parents, my children, my siblings, they say, get some balance, measure yourself, do this, do everything in equal balance. The truth is, and I've read a lot of books on this, the truth is, if you choose balance, right, over sacrifice, unless you're a genius or you're incredibly lucky, you're unlikely to be in the top 1% of people in this world. Yes? You have to give up. You have to recognize that you're going to sacrifice if you want to be great. And that's just the truth. So whatever you choose to sacrifice is your choice, but you must sacrifice something. So the first step, they say, I think Zig Ziglar said this, the first step in life is to have the courage to give up what you don't need, to keep what you need. And that's the first part of sacrifice. Many of us do the things that we don't need, but the idea is to keep the things we need and not the things we don't. And the last one is what we call the just world fallacy. So this is another confession. You know the theory that good is rewarded and evil is punished? It's fake. The world is not fair. It's not true. Good is not rewarded and evil is not always punished. So you know what? Roll with the punches. Don't say, bad luck, why me? It's okay. Roll with the punches. My 8 principles, my 5 tools, my 2 confessions, 1 summary. If there was anything I could say, in terms of where we are today, remember the story I started with, right? We have to change the narrative. We have done more, and I say we, I'm a woman today, right? We have done more, at least as much, and probably more, than all the men in the world, right? The problem is the narrative. It's taking control of our own destiny and making sure we talk about it and we push it out there and not be afraid. I don't believe in the glass ceiling. As a matter of fact, I think the term should be scrapped. There isn't a ceiling. We've just got to go. We've got to do what we need to do. But it's not tomorrow. It's not when I'm more comfortable. It's not after I have my children. It's not after my children grow up. It's now. The opportunity of a lifetime can only be realized in the lifetime of that opportunity. So I'm going to round up the way I started. Remember what we said at the beginning. We are exactly who we need to be to see the change or to make the change we want to see. Thank you so much for inviting me. It's been a pleasure being here. Please bring me back. Thank you.
Please give a round of applause to our he for she, because he says it's a female today. That was the most inspiring, mentally stimulating, and engaging keynote address ever. Thank you very much, Mr. Paul Onwuanibe. Please hold on, sir. We're not done.
Let me see if you heard that last thing he said. The opportunity of a lifetime can only be realized
in the lifetime of that opportunity.
Ooh, you heard him.
Punchline nuggets. My notes full. Thank you very much. Give him a resounding, befitting, lusty round of applause for that excellent keynote address today. Thank you very much for gracing us with your presence and for sharing from your wealth of knowledge and experience. Thank you.
I put it to you that it is a rarity to have a keynote speaker that has the audience applauding him every 2 sentences.
With all the reactions, wow.
And you got it. We were looking at this audience. It was a session of oohs and ahs.
Absolutely.
And clapping and nodding. Some people stood, some people recorded. You were phenomenal. Thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. One last applause. This applause is going for his, hold on. Do you know what you're clapping for? You're clapping for his red tie. Thank you so much, our keynote speaker. Please come this
Center
way
stage.
as we invite the Chairman, Board of Trustees of WIMBIZ and all the members of the Board of Trustees. Our Chairman is making her way already. Please encourage our... Do you think it's easy to be the Chairman, Board of Trustees of WIMBIZ? Thank you so much, Bisi Adeyemi. She will be supported by the chair of our conference planning group committee, Molade Adeniyi. All the members of the Board of Trustees of WIMBIZ, please join us on stage. ED of WIMBIZ, you should be on the stage supporting this process. Thank you so much, everyone. For the group photograph with our keynote speaker of the WIMBIZ 22nd Annual Conference. You know, this is front page picture now.
This is the money shot.